Meditation and Spiritual Life by Swami Yatishwarananda. The Spiritual Quest. What is this phase of spirituality and the conversion that takes place within us? The young prince Siddhartha was sitting alone under a tree in his palace garden, absorbed in his thoughts. It was midnight, and the whole world lay hushed in darkness and silence. He had just then left the banquet hall, having got disgusted with the noise and mirth of dancing girls, an intense dissatisfaction, a deep void was growing within him. All of a sudden, there arose strong and strange voices. As he listened, he heard some celestial beings singing in chorus, saying, "We mourn for rest, but rest can never find. We know not where we come, when we come, nor where we float away. Time and again we tread this round of smiles and tears. In vain we pine to know where our pathway leads, and why we play this empty play. Rise, dreamer, from your dream and slumber not again." Siddhartha rose from his seat, had a last look at his sleeping wife and child, and set out on his historic journey that ultimately made him Buddha, the Enlightened One. Buddha was not alone in taking to the spiritual path. The Kathopanishad says, "Arise, awake, and realize the truth, following the great teachers." Indeed, from time immemorial, God has been speaking to man through the great scriptures to take up the cross and follow him. And in obedience to his call, thousands of people in the East and in the West have given up their all and taken to this journey into the superconscious realms. For ordinary people, this world and its pleasures are of great importance, but there are people who hunger and thirst after the eternal, the infinite. Think of Swami Vivekananda's struggles and relentless search for truth. He was extraordinarily pure, strong, handsome, intelligent and talented, and could have risen to any height in worldly life if he had only cared to. The poverty and helplessness of his family was another compelling force to drag him into the worldly life. But in spite of all these temptations, he chose the path of renunciation and service. One day or another, in life, every man must have this time when he too feels the call of the spiritual ideal. When such a call comes, he cannot but listen to it. Nothing in the world can then give him satisfaction. He can never find peace until he follows the dictates of that higher call. His inner awareness and compelling urge to follow the higher ideal marks the beginning of spiritual life. The spiritual ideal, then, fascinates him and haunts him all through life. This change from following worldly ideals to following a spiritual ideal is called conversion. Spiritual life begins with that. In the case of some people, this conversion is sudden. In the case of some others, it is a gradual development. The number of people who undergo such genuine conversion is rather small at any time in any country. Whether you like it or not, true spiritual life is only for a chosen few. There can never be any mass spirituality, however beautiful this ideal may seem to you. The Bhagavad Gita says that out of thousands of people, only a few take to spiritual life. And out of them, fewer still really attain the higher superconscious realization. But let us all think we are these chosen few and strive to make ourselves fit for the fulfillment of the highest spiritual ideal. Spiritual aspiration is a rare blessing. In the field of religion also there is a kind of aristocracy. The great saints and sages, the illumined souls in all religions form a class by themselves. But unlike worldly aristocrats, the spiritual aristocrats are always willing to share their riches with others. They are only too glad to give to others what they themselves enjoy. But the pity is, few people care for the great treasures of spiritual life. Most of the people would rather wallow in the pigsty of the world than enjoy the cozy warmth of the spiritual mansion. You can take a horse to the water, but you cannot make it drink if it does not want to. So you need not look around to see how many people are following the spiritual path. If you feel the call of the higher ideal, you should follow it and try to fulfill its conditions. If others don't pay any heed to that call, you cannot do much about them. A parting of ways is inevitable in spiritual life. Shankaracharya says, a human birth, desire for emancipation, and contact with holy men. These three are very rare and are attained only through the grace of the Lord. But even these three advantages are not enough. We must be eager to profit by these and must be willing to sacrifice everything for spiritual life. There must be the readiness to undergo any hardship, pay any price to achieve the supreme goal of life. We should look upon it as a great fortune that for some reason or another, our mind possesses an attraction for the higher and eternal things, and should see that we steadily and gradually proceed along the higher path, never flagging till we reach the goal. Our spiritual fervor is to be maintained, but we very often run the risk of becoming slack. Thus, spiritual strivings stop in most people after they have taken to spiritual life for a certain time. Their minds are too restless and too outgoing to keep up this spiritual fervor and intensity for a very long time, and to go on steadily and doggedly with their spiritual practice and readings and studies. So, we should be on our guard. Dogged tenacity is the one thing needed for spiritual life. All progress can only be had through the steadiness and tenacity, never allowing ourselves to flag or become lukewarm. Wordsworth says in one of his famous poems, "Our birth is but a sleeping and a forgetting." In another place he says, The world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending. We lay waste our powers. We should not spend all our time in such a state. No lasting satisfaction in the world. Very often we get a thing. We find that we really never wanted it. We may have been seeking it, but when we get it, we may actually find that the desire has vanished and some other desire has taken its place. Many people mistake the true nature of their yearnings and give them worldly directions, whereas in reality, no human yearning can ever find satisfaction in anything that is not permanent and unchanging, however much people may try to deceive themselves on this point. The old void haunts them again and again, and mostly in a more terrible and relentless form than before. People seek happiness outside in external objects, in the physical aspects of men and women. But true happiness lies within ourselves. It is our inalienable heritage. External things can never bring true happiness to us. And what little we get disappears in no time. We commit the mistake of looking at a certain span of time instead of looking at the whole of our lifetime. Temporary happiness, there is no doubt, in worldly relations, in human love and human affections. But temporary happiness can never mean real happiness. Rather, it is the opposite of it. True happiness is intrinsic nature of the inner self. Let us have the desire to know our nature, to know our true self. In self-realization alone lies real blessedness. Even though the higher self of man is a part of the divine and is actually inseparable from it, still the devotee gives more importance to God than to his own soul. To him, God alone is a repository of all peace and blessedness. We should try to look within and find him seated within our own hearts. This body of ours is a living temple of God. This is a conception we find stressed again and again in all the scriptures. The best temples of the divine are, however, the great prophets and seers. This is why they exert the greatest influence. Those who have realized the truth in their own souls alone can teach others the way to realization. The Lord is always at the back of our minds, at the back of our personality, and only if we can pray with a fervent heart will the prayer be heard, otherwise not. We should never think in terms of worldly happiness while praying. Happiness, as it is ordinarily understood, is no real index of spiritual life, no proof whatever of spiritual progress or realization. Spiritual happiness is of a different kind. It is the peace of God which passeth all understanding. We should not ask God for the things of the world. Suppose He grants them. The material things may bring troubles too. When we approach this great boon giver, we should never ask Him for worldly things connected with worldly personal wishes and desires. We may approach God just for saving our souls from getting drowned in the ocean of worldliness and infatuation for material things. Ordinarily, if we feel unhappy, we would rather adjust ourselves to our happiness and cling to our desires and fancies than change our ways and come to truth and bliss. We are so body-bound that we stress physical enjoyment more than anything else and are not prepared to renounce it. Rather, we go on clinging desperately to its forms, although we get nothing but kicks and blows again and again. Such is the tremendous power of Maya or ignorance. The Great Father or the Great Mother, the God, is witnessing the children at play. It is only when the child gets tired of its toys and childish occupations, that the Lord really comes to it, draws it away from the playland of illusion. Children play with sweets, with dolls, with toy soldiers, with toy houses, with toy cars, and nothing can be done by the Lord until they get tired of these and turn away from them in utter disgust. God takes it as great fun, and then one day the child has become a little grown up and cries, "What have I done with my life?" And the Lord says, "Yes, what have you done, my child? Who asked you to do it? Who asked you to go on playing indefinitely in such a foolish way? Who asked you to get hurt and get entangled with your toys? Who did it all?" And then very often it is already too late, and the child sits in the ruins of its shattered life and walls.